Hey guys, it's Brigitte with San Diego Seed Company, and today we're going to do a March garden tour, and I'm going to show you what our garden looks like in March, what's blooming, what's fruiting, what looks great, what doesn't, and just demonstrating the transition period that we're in right now. We are going into warm season. Spring is almost sprung, but we definitely have a lot of cool season crops still in the garden. So before we get into that, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button so you're notified anytime we put a video out. As you can see, it's Bloom-arama. I don't know if that's a word, but everything on the farm is blooming like crazy. And that is because the days are getting longer, the sun is getting higher in the horizon, and it is signaling to all of my plants, it's time to flower, baby. So we have tons of volunteer plants that are flowering. We have seed crops that are flowering and going to seed. This is all Ethiopian kale here that we are very excited about it flowering. It's covered in bees, and it's starting to set its seed pods, which we will harvest. We also have other stuff that's flowering, like our cilantro. Now, if you have a garden space that you can leave a little bit of things to go to flower, especially your herbs like cilantro, parsley, dill, you will see that they're covered in bees, beneficial insects. It really does a lot for the garden. And the thing I love about cilantro blooms is they really are beautiful in a flower arrangement. So you get more than just beneficial insects in your garden. You actually get cut flowers as well. And the seeds, as you guys have seen in many of our videos, actually end up being an herb that you can use called coriander. So if you've got cilantro in your garden, let it go to flower if you got the space, and you will be pleasantly surprised with what you get. Now, things are very messy right now, and as you can tell, we're having a little bit of a problem here. Moana, actually, she looks like she has found a gopher hole that she is alerting me to. Right now, springtime, we've got a lot of gopher action happening. We're seeing mounds everywhere, and so we're setting these traps. These are a new trap that we carry called the Gopher Hawk. Really nice because you don't have to dig a hole to set them, and it's a little bit of a cleaner way to catch your gophers. But we are actively trying to keep the gopher population down. It's something that unfortunately we got to do if we want to have a happy garden. You can also see that we are in a transition period. I've got tons of stuff blooming, spring crops, warm season crops, but then I also have the tail end of a lot of my cool season crops that are really done. Got this little cabbage head here that I never harvested, and it's still, you can totally still eat this. It's a little tough, might need to go into soup, but it's really, it's done. The season 4 cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, you should be rounding out your last succession planting of that. You can see kale is going to flower, and this kale has actually been in the ground for more than one season. This is our Black Magic kale, and it's finally going to flower, which means the flavor on this is going to be a little more bitter, a little more tough. And you're also going to see extreme insect pressure on some of the plants that have been in your garden for a long time. You can see here, this thing is covered in aphids. And you know, you can spray those off with a jet of water, which will clear them off. But I've been eating off these plants for over 12 months now. So I think they're done. I think they've given me everything that they're going to give me, and I need to just do general garden cleanup. So these will actually get pulled. I'll just feed those to the chickens. You can see this is some flowering. I think that's arugula, also covered in insects. I want to pull that out because I don't want to create a environment where these aphids can just go crazy. I want to do some general garden cleanup, which is on my laundry list of things to do this week. Get all this cleaned up so I can get ready for planting my tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, all of my warm season crops. So let's keep moving on and checking out what the garden looks like. So we've got our sweet peas that have been blooming for quite some time now, and they're actually already potted up and starting to seed, which is an indicator to you guys that you got to start your sweet peas in zone 9 and 10 in the fall. So most of the flowers that you see on our farm right now that look really amazing, they were actually planted in the fall, left to overwinter. So they grew all winter long. They grew really slow, but what they were doing and what we couldn't see, even though they weren't growing a lot on top of the soil, underneath they were building massive root systems that allowed them to really thrive now that the days are getting longer and the temperatures are warming up. So the sweet peas look amazing. We already have straw flower that's getting ready to bloom. Look at that. And you know, unfortunately, I think what happens for a lot of new flower growers in zone 9 and 10 is you think, well, I want spring flowers, so I will plant flowers in the spring or flower seeds. And that can totally happen, but what happens between now and June is we get really warm, and if you're not irrigating well or your soil's not great, the plants have a hard time establishing, which means you don't get as good of blooms. So I encourage you to start your flower seeds in the fall next year, and you'll notice a big difference in how big your plants are, how many blooms you get, and how long they last. These plants will continue to bloom well into midsummer because they have such big root systems that they have developed. So very excited about these. I need to cut them and bring them into the house. Let's keep moving on and checking out other ways in which we are transitioning from cool season to warm season. Here's a good example over here. We actually have, there's cauliflower that I still need to harvest. Look at this. More Romanesco cauliflower that is just amazing. And I'll tell you what, I'm already tired of eating it. I've been eating it for the last like 3 weeks, giving it away to friends. Luckily, it's beautiful, so people like taking it. This is a cauliflower that is ready to be harvested, and I don't have enough time in the season to start more of them from seed. You could potentially transplant, you know, a plant that's gonna produce, but really, days are getting longer, sun's getting higher on the horizon, temperatures are getting warmer, we're moving into warm season. And here's a fine example of that. Right over here, I've already harvested all the cauliflower that was here, and I have put in my tomatoes. So these tomatoes they're already planted, and we have our plant clips on them and our tomahawk system, which we have posted other videos about how that system works, but I've already put tomatoes in the ground. So if you're in zone 9 and 10, you can put tomatoes in the ground. If you're at higher elevations, you're gonna wanna use row cover. It's a very inexpensive protection that you can just, you know, help make sure that they stay a little bit warmer. Also protects them from insects. I am close enough to the coast. I'm not really worried about how cold these guys are gonna get, so I think they'll be just fine. So these are our Mariana's Peace, and we're so excited to do seed production of those this year. They're big, fat, delicious slicers, so good on a BLT or any sandwich really, but we will plant Mariana's Peace all the way through here on all of these trellises. So I only got 1 row done this weekend, and then next weekend I'll keep moving on all of the different rows. So you can see that we've got this borage that took over. So it was massive. It literally was into the walkway. So I'm chopping that back, unfortunately, to make room for my tomatoes. So this is a good example of kind of how you think about your garden. This borage, I let it go crazy this winter because I had the space. It wasn't a big deal. But here's some of the problems with letting it get too big. This is a cauliflower plant. This cauliflower plant is the same as this plant. And as you can tell, the borage totally took it over. It didn't get enough sunlight, never produced a cauliflower head, and never will, because it was engulfed in this plant. So you as a gardener have to make the decision of, well, do I have enough space? Do I really love this plant? Or is it taking up valuable space that I need for something else? And there is no one answer. It depends on your garden, your desires, and your needs. I really wish that I could keep this, but unfortunately this whole plant is gonna get pulled out because I need to put my tomatoes in, and this is where I have my trellises. It's the best tomato spot in my garden, and I don't get a whole lot out of this plant except just how beautiful it is. So you have to make that decision for your needs. So we got here our gorgeous elephant garlic. It is still growing and looking really nice. This is gonna stay in the ground all spring, most of summer, until the tops brown and fall over in the fall, and that will be a signal of when we need to harvest it. So garlic is a crop that you really gotta dedicate a lot of space to, and it takes up that space for a long period of time. This is a lot of elephant garlic. Nobody, I don't know any household that could eat this much elephant garlic. A lot of this garlic will get resold, and so you might only need a pot worth or one row worth of elephant garlic. This is pretty excessive, but it's important to know how long garlic takes, and so where you put it in your garden matters because it's going to be occupying that space for quite a few months. The other thing I want to point out in our spring garden is just how many blooms there are. I mean, look at this. It's incredible how many flowers we have. And I'll be honest, I didn't do much to make these blooms happen. A lot of it is seed production that happened the previous year. The seeds fell into the ground. They germinated. Because we have drip tape down, they're irrigated, and so they naturally grew. In fact, you can see right here all of the things that we've done seed production of the last year. We have our black knight scabiosa, we have our flax that is growing, we have our alyssum, our milkweed, and these are all things that we've done seed production of, and they're reseeding, falling into the ground, or a lot of times what happens is I clean the seed on this concrete slab, the wind blows it over here, and it starts to grow. Now, if you want this kind of carefree garden that just really grows on its own, there are two key things that you need, especially in zone 9 and 10. One is irrigation. We simply do not get enough rainfall from the sky to sustain this type of growth. If you look deep in here, you will find I've got T-tape in here that stays on the plants, and I water them year round. The nice thing with the drip tape is you can water very little. It's not a massive amount of water that you're putting through that T-tape, but it is moisture that is staying in the ground to keep alive all the soil microbes. So you have to have irrigation, and then you have to have happy soil. And part of having the happy soil is having that irrigation, because that moisture in the soil keeps alive the soil microbes, all the beneficial microbiology that's in the soil, the worms, keeps the soil pliable so that you actually can work it, and it allows for seeds to germinate. So if you have a little area in your garden where you can let some of your wildflowers go to seed, they tend to be a little ugly when that happens, but if you can get through that period, let them seed, fall into the ground, you will notice that next spring you will have these big, beautiful plants that just kind of grow on their own. I don't really do anything with this patch. It's just a happy wild seed patch. And the only thing I do is come out and harvest these blooms and enjoy them in my house. Okay, so that was our March garden tour. And as you can see, there's a lot of things going on, and we are in total transition mode right now. Between now and April, I have a lot of work to do. If you guys have our urban farming calendar, you know the list of things that you should be doing in the garden in March and April is very extensive. So I gotta get out here, I have weeds to pull, I have crops to harvest, and I have warm season plants to put in the ground. So come April, it's gonna look totally different, and stay tuned for that garden tour.